Hello, everybody. Welcome to Maker's Bar. We are creating a million leaders. Today, we're speaking with Chris Joannou. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Chris?
No, but no one gets it right. It's fine.
How do you pronounce that?
It's Joannou.
Joannou. Oh, yeah, I would not have got that. We're speaking with Chris Joannou. Very excited. He is the VP of Ecosystem Growth at Draper University. He's a very long career inside the investor and startup universe industry. He has actually also been a podcast host. I'm excited to hear more about that, whether it's on or off air. Spoken with many great leaders, including Nobel Peace winner, and that's very cool. Just an incredible journey, an incredible history here from Chris, and I'm ready to dive into it. I'm Troy Goldenberg. I am one of your hosts here at Maker's Bar, and on that note, Chris, I would love to hear about your personal journey, wherever you want to start that personal journey, from childhood or college or anywhere at all.
How you doing? Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm Australian. I grew up in Australia. So fortunate enough I'm calling from Melbourne, Australia right now. How far back do you want to go? Was lucky to have like an inspirational father that was kind of a mentor and an entrepreneur, and pushed to go to university, get the education, all that kind of stuff. Studied multimedia business marketing at university. After I did my design degree, so a bit of creative design thinking and creative arts in the background. I know you wanted to talk about goals and targets and all that stuff as well. So yeah, part of my 2024 is to do more artwork. What else you got, mate?
I would love to hear more about your professional journey. What brought you to your VP at Draper that you are today, and what you're working on at Draper University.
Yeah, so I studied multimedia business marketing, went into traditional kind of career in marketing. Didn't know what kind of role to get leaving university. It's pretty hopeless, isn't it? I mean, so more recently, I'll get into, I work at Draper University. It's founded by Tim Draper, famous billionaire venture capitalist. He's there in Silicon Valley. Has a long line of rich history in Silicon Valley. Pretty much was, grasslands before the Drapers got there. So, he's actually fourth generation venture capital. So they pretty much started it. They're one of the first Silicon Valley funds. They created the general partner, limited partner model all VCs use today. And very proud to be part of their organization. I work for Draper University, which is their entrepreneurial education kind of institution. It is not a university. It's more like a founder residency and accelerator. You will not get a degree, but you will get, the fundamentals and everything you need to start a business or, scale a business. I got there in a very roundabout way, I think, as everyone does. I was at Draper Startup House, which is another Draper business where we have hotels and more like hostels for young entrepreneurs around the world. So kind of got in the, in the area, or the ability to kind of get on the radar for the Draper U team from Draper Startup House, and prior to that, helped scale communities for Startup Grind and worked at a major accelerator called Startup Bootcamp, where I helped train the growth hackers and do some of the venture building. So helping like Mars, Nestle, Asahi with some of their growth or innovation. So yeah, that's the 2-minute version. Troy, you can get it.
I appreciate it. I would love, again, when you have more time, I would love to just dive down the 2-hour version. because it's very interesting. I love what you do. Like I love the industry. I'm very interested in startups and venture capital and the whole thing. And Tim Draper, the more I've learned about Draper University, which I've come across recently, the more impressed I am. So it's a very cool organization. And as far as the startup and venture capital world, and I've seen that you're an investor in many things as well. How have you seen this industry evolve in the past decade, and where do you see it going in the next decade?
I think everything's kind of AI at the moment. For me, it's kind of I heard this quote the other day from a colleague, Joannou, who leads kind of our early stage investing team, or like first point of contact with the deals we have at Draper University Ventures, around there not being much of a moat for any software company now because of AI. And it's super interesting. Our super interesting concept right now that everything can kind of be replicated or duplicated. I also saw is it Shamath, one of the early Facebook employees I think he's also the founder of Social Capital, also put a tweet out or something like, hey, I can build any software you have for, with 80% of the features you have for I think it was 10 or 20% of the cost with AI and offshoring my offshore team. So this is kind of where we're at today, is you're going to have to be really future forward. We think of it as deep tech, that's how, we look at moonshots, we look at deep tech. We always have kind of that long shot, see if the world catches up to, these grand visions of founders. I think that more than ever is kind of will hold true now with AI, because if it's just some sort of incremental improvement, on another SaaS product, then it can be replicated pretty quickly, and we'll get and AI will get there, be able to knock them off quicker and quicker. So I think that's where we're at the moment. For me, just kind of meeting lots of startups, both from a community perspective and then through various programs, and helping startups in those programs. I would just try and hustle and get some sweat equity. If I had the cash, I would put cash in, but I kind of got a bit of a portfolio together with hustling. That's kind of my what I do and what I do well, I guess. It was anything that kind of was exciting for me at the time. Originally law tech, and I think that's going to pay off pretty soon with Law Advisor, where we did put some cash in, and then more recently blockchain stuff. Super passionate about that. I was never a crypto person, and then we were started to do sold some programs within Draper U. I had bits and pieces. We all have the stories where we could have bought Bitcoin or whatever at whatever price, but it wasn't until recently where we started running programs and scouting startups and stuff like that for Draper U programs, where I got super excited about the business models that could only exist in Web3 and the excitement of the founders. So yeah, I think for the most part it's kind of Web3, creator space, and then some law tech.
Very cool. When you say law tech, what exactly do you mean there?
So Law Advisor as an example is kind of say probably leader in legal ops. It's a new kind of category. They have a couple of products. One is enterprise. To think of it simply, you can't have your legal docs in the Dropbox and stuff like that. So you've got kind of this file storage stuff, but then you've got an operating system or a dashboard for lawyers built by lawyers. So you've got, that's kind of the enterprise solution. They do that for I think they just picked up Netflix as a client, and they've got all the law firms, which kind of ticks the box on how, this is what lawyers want. And then they've kind of got a disruptive product in this marketplace where you can go on as a startup founder or as whoever it may be and search a subject, and they'll connect you with different lawyers from around the world that are experts on that topic. And then they just backed it up now with some AI features to ensure that your business is compliant, to help make the matchmaking more efficient, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really exciting times for that. So you basically got the disruption of law. You know, we've got a lot of, you know, we've all been there where we're trying to figure out, you know, if we need a lawyer for something, if we need to get a contract for something, what kind of contract do we need? And we start talking to people, and it can get quite costly. And sometimes we may not know the language, the terminology. So they've got this kind of baseline product for the startup founders to make sure that they can get what they need at the price point they need and get them connected to the right people. And then the enterprise stuff that's built by lawyers for lawyers. So that's my doing my dash for law advisor for the day.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's interesting how I would have assumed legal industry would have had all of these innovations quickly. Like they would be one of the first ones to adopt all of these innovations. But it's interesting how that seems to be one of the later ones, actually, while the world is jumping into Web3 and AI, which when I was a kid, I'd say cloud-based technology and ERPs were taking this huge jump. And that was kind of the great innovation of the time. I would have assumed that legal work would have been up on all of that as well. So it's interesting to see how this affects different industries at different times. And it's very cool that the world's getting, people like yourself are getting more into blockchain and Web3. It's one of the discussions I have a decent amount on Maker's Bar and other platforms as well. So it's very cool to see where that's all going. And 10 years from now, the world could be a very different place, which is exciting and scary. But moving on a bit to your leadership and management style, how would you describe your leadership style and how has it evolved over the years? So I assume working at Draper, you're above students and some faculty, and I've had to come into this leadership role and problems that come with it over all these years of your experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, interfacing with the startups from around the world, because they're not really students; they're kind of high growth startups. It's very much about service. You know, it's what do they need from a educational perspective, the lectures, whatever. I do teach some of this, stuff on growth and sales and partnerships. That's what I'm best at. But for the most part, we're bringing in, the founder of Zappy or whatever on different topics, right? We're fortunate enough that we're right there in the middle of it, and we've invested in enough companies that we get all these kind of superstar founders to deliver it. So for the most part, like I said, my interfacing with the students, which are actually high growth startups, it's very much about how I can help them, how I can connect them, I can get them access to whatever, answer any questions. So I think that's part of it is just trying to help. I mean, that's a philosophy I actually got from Silicon Valley, from past bosses. It's like, well, how can I help? Right, that was the first question, and it's a very much a beautiful thing in Silicon Valley, right? Because it does get knocked quite a bit with whatever turmoil is happening at the moment. But that's the culture that I know. That's the what's kind of shaped me as a leader. And then I guess from a team perspective, I think it's kind of clear goals, clear visions, and then autonomy as best as possible. Like have great people that you can trust to get the job done. Although I am by nature very persistent. So I don't know if from time to time I'm micromanaging. I don't think so, but and it's from sales, yeah. Just following up all the time, just making sure we're on track with stuff. And got that from my father, where I found it also very annoying. But I do it myself, yeah. I want to make sure that job gets done. So I think it's kind of somewhere in between there, dealing with people and it's also a level of service with your own team, right? You're trying to help them get what they need to get the goals done. Yeah. Does that answer the question? I guess.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Actually, it leads me to more questions. But before I get to the next question, I do find it very interesting how, I mean, in Silicon Valley, we're talking about AI and blockchain a second ago, and some of the most complex stuff in the world. And then when it comes to, hey, how do you get things done? What's the leadership style? One of the things he said is, oh, it's how can I help? It's very simple. Okay, what can I do? How can I help? And it's crazy that when you just really break everything down, it does come down to these simple steps and these simple philosophies. And that's what I find time and time again, speaking with amazing professionals like yourself. I would love to talk about growth for a second, actually, to go off the question there for a second. What are some of the things that you have found that work very well, and some of the things that you have found kind of lead to destruction or stagnation of a company when it comes to growth? What are key things to focus on there?
Yeah. Well, I think there's kind of having that North Star or that big objective kind of hanging over you. I think for most companies, there's some sort of challenge or some sort of something that's the catalyst for the reason they're trying to experiment with growth. Maybe they just need to pay the bills if they're a startup. But kind of a clear mission or vision. You have to start there, and then you got to think about, hey, what can I do to move the needle, right? And generally, we're trying to do that as cheaply as possible. We're running a bunch of experiments, usually starting with social media. Sometimes we get very creative. It depends on the audience, right? Where do your people hang out online? Where do your people hang out in person, right? It doesn't have to always be digital, right? Sometimes we've got people together for an event and they think they're there for an event, but we're running an experiment, right? And then just having some metrics around what does success look like, what does kind of failure look like, what means we need to try again, and then iterate again and again and again until you've got the direction you need to go, but you're not kind of crippled by data, right? Because I think and I'm kind of jumping between what startups need and what corporates need, but the corporates in particular will we need more data on this before they'll act again and again. Meanwhile, startups have launched the product and cutting their lunch, right? So with startups, it's kind of they're short on time, resources, they need to move quickly. They've got some indication that this is the direction they need to launch the product, or add the features, whatever, and they get some intel from the market and they act on it. Smart corporates do the same, and then corporates that are trying to learn their way will get too bogged down and let's run the experiment again and again and again until they feel like there's some certainty in it. But that is growth is a combination of kind of strategy, the creative you need to experiments, and then the creative you need to kind of run those experiments. For the most part, we're sitting on social A/B split tests again and again, multiple versions, and you can quickly understand what problems resonating with the consumer, what headline, what bottle cap, it depends on what you're doing. I'm happy to kind of talk through any product you want right now. I'm pretty good on the fly.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about the products. I do find it, again, I like to point out things I think that I find interesting here. The different challenges between the corporate, the more established businesses, and the startups. It's a mentality that seems to be driven by their geography pops in mind, but geography is not the right word. Their overall setting, resources, as you said, time, the bottlenecks are different for corporations and for startups. I am curious to hear more about who you enjoy working with the most as far as a startup versus an established corporation, the reasons why. And maybe, I don't know if you can talk certain products and companies, but if you can, let's dive down that after.
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely startups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, corporate. So like, it's a tricky one, right? If they're, typically the innovation needs to happen outside of the building, and they need to have free reign, and they need to have leadership that understands that it's okay to fail, because a lot of times it's, for me anyway, we were kind of teaching the principles of lean and agile, whatever, and while we're trying to launch a product, right, which is quite difficult. So everything startup, and why we do this, from the young guy and this team full of PhDs or whatever in innovation stuff in the room. So you've got a lot of egos in the room, a lot of people that kind of set in how they do innovation, right? And it's quite interesting because you should be trying to learn new things, test new things, and all that, but a lot of innovation people around the world are just like already know everything about innovation. There's no need to change, right? Which is like the opposite of innovation.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and then there are also kind of, a lot of well-paid executives. So there's this fear of failure, right? There's this, it's a lot easier to launch Coke, vanilla, whatever, right? Than and Coke's not an example. It's just like, it's that exponential thinking. It's that moonshot thinking that I think we do quite well, and the mindset that we do quite well at Draper U, that needs to come into the innovation process. They're not short on ideas. They're not short on cash. Yeah. But they just cannot execute. And they can't execute because everyone's trying to cover their own ass for the most part. Right. That's my experience in corporates. Yeah. If they do get what you worked on for 4 months to market, it works. They'll make a lot of money, and they go through the ringer again. But a lot of time there's too many people from too many areas of the business trying to crush it for the safety of their own role, right? So that's it's a lot easier. So I had a business called Private Label Lab. My brother still runs it, where we would do innovation as a service. And I think I should get back to it now that I'm talking to you. But it was basically we would run the experiments. We would go and do everything, and then bring you the product. We'd even source it and things like that, and be like, hey, we think this fits perfectly in your portfolio. We just need to test it in the market now. Here's why. And so it was almost, it's kind of done. On the the startup side, it's kind of if people are doing growth hacking on a day-to-day basis, I think they see the benefit, and it can be used from everything from product development to kind of anything, optimizing. I think you do need to have this. It's a mindset that we're always like, how can we improve something, or how can we test the market on something, and then we don't have the answers. Kind of stereotypical lean startup stuff. Specific examples with the corporates, it's pretty easy to kind of hey, we have this piece of technology, but we don't know what price it should be. We don't know who's the consumer. We don't know, like, that's a good position to be in, and then you can kind of shape it over many months of like, here's your communication strategy, here's the product, here's how it should launch, here's how the packaging should be, here's the price point. We tested it. People started putting it in their carts. This is the problem that they resonate with. With startups, it's more around creating awareness for the product, or it's the pirate metrics. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that that funnel, but that's what we kind of live by.
I'm not. Can you dive down that term for a second?
Yeah, so it's a term coined by Dave McClure, and it's very geeky. He did have like geeks on a plane stuff. It's awareness acquisition. Yeah, testing myself here, man. Awareness acquisition. Geez, something that starts with R. Something then retention. AARR. So it's R, like a pirate. You got it.
I like it. Oh, I got acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue.
Yeah.
Pirate metrics. That is interesting. Okay, that's another term for me to. I'm a geek too. I'm a nerd too, in my own way. So I oh wow, it's nothing to learn. So it's very cool.
So essentially, then you know when you talk to startups or businesses, and they say, hey, like nobody knows about the product, or you have an awareness problem. We have them sign up and then they don't commit after the first month trial. Oh, you have a retention problem. You start to think about the business in those layers. I just haven't done much on the growth hacking side for a while. I'm more on the partnership stuff for the last few years. But it's a great way to look at businesses and categorize them, and that's generally what startups are trying to do. But they just do it quicker.
Very interesting. Very interesting. On that note of who was it that coined the pirate metrics?
Dave McClure.
Dave McClure. So on the note of someone like that, maybe someone that is an innovator inside the innovation space, what were some resources that maybe you go back to, if the books or mentors that have been instrumental for you as a professional?
In general, or around growth?
Either or, actually.
For the business stuff, I think in startup land, it's I guess the list everyone's got. Lean startup, and you put me on the spot. I should have
been. Okay.
Yeah. Kind of your business kind of theory stuff. I also like so the Clayton Christensen stuff, but I also loved his kind of life philosophy stuff. I don't know. He's got How Will You Measure Your Life is an interesting book from one of the most important startup kind of theorists you had Steve Blank from Stanford, and you had Clayton Christensen from Harvard. I think they were the kind of the basis. And then I always loved Andrew Chen's stuff from, he's now at Andreessen Horowitz and blogging again, which is super cool because I love his content. But he used to write a lot of stuff about growth and kind of, share underneath the hood with what he was learning. There's a guy, Misha, from the 10X Growth Machine. So he was he led all the venture builders at startup boot camps, innovation consultancy was called Inner Leaps. So he would have ran maybe 80 projects with the biggest companies around the world to help them launch products. I think he's you've got your he's probably the least known but the best person at corporate innovation in the world.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you've got Alex Osterwalder, obviously, and these they wrote the Business Model Canvas stuff. Obviously, Superstar and the materials are referenced by innovation consultants worldwide. But I imagine he would do a lot of corporate stuff, but I imagine there would also be a lot of high profile talks and stuff, right? Whereas this guy's in the trenches for the last 3 years solving problems for corporates, and then kind of iterating his theories. I think he's probably the best innovation person in the world. I was lucky to work with him on a few projects, and he would manage all the innovation. We call them venture builders. So we would, when we were running teams for these projects, we would have a growth hacker, a designer, and a venture builder. That's how they did it. A team of 3 every time, and then we'd go in and try and solve problems. But for the most part, it was people management, because you had all these, like I said, all these different people with very different roles inside corporate. So his book, which I don't have here, 10x Growth Machine, I think it is. And then generally, I read just nothing but business books, and then and podcasts. So it's nothing. I'd love to get a fiction book, just balance it out, but it doesn't happen. It's all bios and theory and can't think of any others at the moment.
No, that's a lot. It's a lot of different people to look into and books to read. So I'm excited to jump into a few of those, honestly. Other than that, I guess personal mentors. I know you mentioned your dad and your brother. You were doing work with your brother. Is that? I'm just curious, honestly. This is not on the questionnaire at all, but do you still do any work with your brother? Is that an older, younger? How does that dynamic work? Because just so you know about me a little bit, I have 3 older brothers. 2 of them are very into business. One is actually a solopreneur. He quit his job and is full-time in land investing now. And another they're both in real estate. Another is a corporate developer and corporate brokerage person. He owns, he's an owner in that business as well. And I find going to them is one of my big advantages in life. So I'm just curious to hear more about your family and how that kind of affects your day-to-day life as, a person and a business person.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have my father as a role model, and he was like this. It was like and watch his career trajectory. It's so I we grew up in West Sydney, but it was kind of like the nicest side, but it's not the best area in Sydney, and then he we would just move house or location, and it would just keep getting better, and that was a result of his hard work and putting himself out there for the family. And so we moved to America when he was working for Kellogg's, and then he got went with one of the execs, and then we went to that was in Pennsylvania, and then went to Iowa, and then bigger house, better cars. And it's not only now you realize as you get older the stress that our parents had to deal with while they were doing all this stuff. But there was never a time where I didn't have the ability to kind of ask for advice and get great advice, right, on in life and in business. And so there came a time where I was graduating and stuff, and I was like, man, we need to start a business, Dad. You've been making money for all these people for many years. You need to start a business. And we had this big kind of deal on the line to get it started, and he was hesitant because I think it was basically his life savings, and we were just like, just go for it, Dad. Don't be a punk. It's like, and that was kind of the formation of our first family business. It was very successful. Grew year on year, like doubled year on year. This was the innovation business as a service, predominantly focused on private label. We wanted to give companies that were doing private label an advantage over brands. And that's another podcast. Don't worry about it. But it was really cool because we'd get products and we'd create them, and you'd see them on shelves. So he eventually, started stepping away, due to health, and then me and my brother were left to run it. For the most part, loved working with my brother. We don't work together now. I think there's the growing pains between that being your brother and that being your colleague, right? And having that respect and the separating the two is the bit that happens with maturity. I think because we would like tell each other to get fucked, and and this kind of thing. You got to do some editing now, buddy. I'm sorry. And we would have these arguments and stuff because we were kind of, both were right, and so it takes time to be like, hey, like this is your lane, this is my lane, this is how we work well together, and you would not talk like that in front of, people in the office and stuff like that, or to your father, right? The way we get heated in that, but it's also a lot of beauty in that because it's like it's family, right? Everyone's going to have your back. Like that's the goal. So
no, I love it. That's amazing, and like I think it's really cool how when your father is getting ready to take that next step into starting his own business, it was his sons, it was the younger generation that kind of gave him the confidence and the ability, hey, go do this, you can do this. As I've gotten older, a few of my brothers are in the business side of things. They're one's 6 years older than me to 7 years older than me almost. And it's interesting how I've gotten older that I have found myself in that position a couple of times, which is something that is very new to me and is not what I'm used to. I'm very much that's the leader, listen to what he says. And then, but as you get older and as you gain your own perspective and skills and knowledge, yeah, you can butt heads a little bit. And at the end of the day, you look back a few months down the road, it's like, oh, that's a really good thing that conversation happened. It is what it is. And I love big family guys. So I love hearing about that journey and that story. We are at almost 40 minutes now, coming up on it. So I'll ask a couple more questions and I'll let you get back to your day. Looking back on your career, were there any, I mean, I would assume that the family business is a big one, but are there any pivotal moments that you think led you to where you are? And were there any things that you might do differently to follow up that question?
Yeah, good question. I think, and I'm still trying to do this now, right? Like, it's just getting good at being uncomfortable, right? Like, I mean, we had Guy Kawasaki out here in Melbourne for an event I ran, and he was it's just the quote that comes to mind, but he was talking about at the time we all hate these bosses that we have, right? That they're like the ones that challenge us the most, but when we look back, I think he was talking about Steve Jobs, right? He definitely was talking about Steve Jobs, but when we look back, it's those ones, sometimes those people that pushed us the hardest were the ones that helped us grow, right? So then you go, well, it's almost just a matter of making that a life philosophy, kind of moving towards, running towards the grenade or whatever analogy you want to use. But it's that realizing that that growth comes in discomfort, and you just kind of put yourself on the line as much as possible and put your hand up, and sometimes you screw it up, but for the most part, there's some learning in it, and sometimes you don't see how it all fits together until later. But I don't think anything's lost. So to answer your second question, no, I wouldn't change a thing because it got me to this point in time at this moment right now. I do wish I had a better intro and you sent me those questions so I knew what the fuck I was talking about. But other
well, that's my mistake. That's something I would change. So I'm sorry about that. That's a miscommunication there.
Just kidding.
I do. No, I love it. And like you said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You only connect them looking backwards. And running towards the grenade or running towards the war, being comfortable with being uncomfortable that was one of my big personally, that was also one of my big things to kind of learn at the end of my university time. For example, when we're off here, to talk about this with you more, but I did just run towards a war in Israel. I went out there to volunteer for a few weeks and see family and friends and help any way I could. And that is a bravery muscle, so to speak, that I wouldn't have had 10 years ago without the different experiences and even business travel that I had done. I'd worked all over the United States now at this point and traveled a ton and learned to be uncomfortable that way. I'm a kid from small town Kansas, so like that, it was the incremental steps of building that bravery muscle, so to speak, and just continuing to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations is something I've also learned is super important and doesn't necessarily get easier. You just get stronger, so it's very, very cool. And then finally, my last question here for you, and I can let you get back to your day, and I appreciate the time. What advice would you have for someone like myself who's just getting started in your industry and aiming for this type of career and leadership that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think it's just work, and you got to work your guts out, right? Like it's this kind of. I know this because I'm trying to work out I do a lot of this life philosophy stuff and goals and listen to a lot of stuff like that at the moment, particularly in January. I think a lot of people do it where you're trying to figure out, what you're going to focus on and where's it all going. A lot of people that talk about this, like balance and stuff, they're already made a lot of money. I think that's the difference, right? So if you're starting out, you just got to hustle. You got to hustle. You got to put your hand up for everything there is, and just like, do the work. It's the work, and you got the time, you got the energy. You don't have the kids. I got the kids now. It's just like it's a different set of obligations. So you can run as fast as you can at the wall every time. It's like I think that's all there really is, right? You got this kind of big picture in your mind of where you want to take it all, if you're lucky enough, but it doesn't matter if you don't. You just kind of got an idea about where you want to go, and then take every opportunity you can and work your guts out. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'll outwork them. I think that's the Charles Barkley, yeah. So I live by that one. Still hustling.
Love it. I love it. It's an answer I've heard before and an important one to hear again. I think, especially.
Who else said that? Let me hear about this great individual.
So actually, this is a pretty good story. So my oldest brother, he's a corporate real estate broker and developer. He lives in Omaha, Nebraska, and one of his big clients lives out in California, but hasn't been investing in Omaha. So he, once a month or so, he'll come with his friends and check out the investments and talk to my brother and, game plan and all those type of things. So I'm there in Omaha one weekend for this, and I'm out with them, just a bunch of very successful, rich people. And we're walking from a restaurant to a bar or something. And I'm just talking with one of these, 60-year-old guys and just more or less asking him the same questions I'm asking you. Just I'm interested in learning from these successful people. And I don't remember the question I asked. It was in the middle of the conversation. He just kind of goes, "Hey, here's the thing. There's times in life where you walk. There's times in life where you jog. And there's times in life where you sprint. And you're now in a time of life where you need to sprint. And that's what you should be doing. Whatever direction you're going, sprint. And don't be afraid to think, oh, am I sprinting the wrong direction? Because you can always just turn left, turn right, and just keep sprinting. And that's the stage of life that you're in." And it was one of those conversations. I mean, I've heard these answers a lot, but there are certain parts of certain conversations that would just stick with you. And that was one of those things that stuck with me. And you can hear the same advice 50 times, and that 50th time, it clicks with you. What's going to click with everyone's going to be different. So, and it's always good to hear it though. It's one of those. There's a quote that I like a lot that someone says motivation doesn't last, and the next person responds, well, neither do showers. That's why it's recommended daily.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important to keep reading the books, listen to the podcast, having these conversations to keep yourself in the proper mindset, which is very easy to fall out of. So on that note, I appreciate this conversation. I've learned a lot. I have a lot to look into. I look forward to following your journey, and I'll send the LinkedIn connection right now, right when I hit end recording, and I'm excited to learn more from you and about you. So, Chris, thank you so much, and I can give you your time back.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.